Hello, my darlings. How are you? I'm Ed Stott. Welcome to my podcast that's helpful. Each week, as you know, we're gathering the skills you need to build your best life one episode at a time. Today, creativity. How often do you get creative? For me, it's actually not very often. There are obviously some creative tasks in making this podcast, and I'm currently deep in my painting by numbers era, which I'm absolutely loving. My ideal evening at the moment is an episode of maths and a little painting. What a dream. I've just completely exposed myself there, so don't judge me. Other than that, though, it's not really something I make a priority, and to be honest, I don't know many people who do. It feels like something that's not essential, and it's a bit of an afterthought, really, if you've got some extra time on your hands. But Caitlin Marshall and Lissie Rose say it absolutely should be in all of our lives as an essential tool for supporting good mental health. They even argue its science-backed powers make it something that should be prescribed just like medication. They're the founders of Makeshift, an organisation that helps to deliver creative first aid to people who need it most. Today, we're going to learn about some of the simple tasks that you can introduce into your life that are going to give you some of the brilliant boosts, and we'll talk into the science behind why creativity is just so important for your mental health. Before we get to that, when we're focused on building our best lives, it's super easy to overlook the little things that make a big difference. And for me this year, I've really been working on nailing my nutrition. I don't love cooking, and so I am so thrilled to say that I've found a way to do it that doesn't involve hours of meal prep, a whole bunch of expensive ingredients, and heaps of time researching healthy recipes. Outsourcing my meal prep to You Foods has taken the mental load out of making sure my meals are fresh, healthy, and nutritionally balanced. Every week, you choose from 60 meals. Let gourmet chefs whip them up for you and have them delivered to your door fresh, never frozen. They're always adding new meals and tweaking recipes to help keep it more delicious than ever. And there's no cooking, no dishes, no cleanup. And best of all, I've reclaimed my Sunday afternoons from meal prep hell. What a win. Make sure you use my code HELPFUL for up to $200 off your first 5 boxes. Okay, on to the show. I began by asking Caitlin what on earth creative first aid actually is.
So creative first aid is the application of creativity, which is something that every single person has and is born with, using that in a way that supports our nervous system and actually helps to regulate our nervous system in a way that is crucial for mental well-being. So it's not the same as art therapy, which is really important. It's a kind of style of therapy that uses artistic mediums to work through tricky and hard stuff. This is just about connecting to your creativity because it's fun and it connects us to joy, it connects us to the world around us, it connects us to other people as well. So it's the application of that in a way that makes us feel good and is good for us. So being good at it isn't really the point.
Ooh, I love it. And so we obviously, as Caitlin said, we're all creative and have the ability to be creative. Then why do we find it so bloody hard? Because it is quite hard sometimes.
It's so strange. I think creativity, unlike other things that are innately human, is this thing that we kind of make rules about really early in life of who gets to be creative and who doesn't. And we get messages usually at school, I think, and we've met hundreds of people that say, oh, an art teacher told me when I was 12 that I couldn't draw, and so I'm terrible at art. And what a time to make that decision about yourself and close the door forever. Like it's quite a tragedy because there is all this evidence that humans are designed to be creative and express ourselves in different ways creatively. Just like we're designed to kind of move and use exercise and movement in our life. But so many people just have that door shut to them and don't really know how to open it again. So our work is a lot about helping people open that door.
And to help people open that door, you've gone deep into the science behind it. And in the book, you talk about a lot of the scientific studies and, proven benefits of being creative. Can you talk us through some of the benefits that we get from being creative?
Yeah. I mean, we do cite a lot of studies in the book, particularly in Caitlin's chapter, Creativity as Medicine. But just to give you a real quick one to start with, there's evidence that states that just simply making marks on a page, drawing a stick figure, which everybody can do, right? You can just make a mark on a page, or even like a line in sand or in the soil, in the dirt. It interacts with our brain chemistry and lowers our cortisol levels, our stress hormones, and it can boost our serotonin levels. So it's this beautiful interplay of neuroscience happening just by drawing a couple of marks on a piece of paper.
And yeah, there's some amazing research around music. There was a peer review of 29 studies on just listening to music that found it mirrors and echoes the effects of antidepressant. And in fact, this peer review named music as a natural antidepressant. And again, that's something that everyone can experience. And it's a little bit about how our mindset of when we're doing those things. But the fact that this research is out there really helps people to value the act of listening to music. And then another fantastic study in the UK has found that singing in a group of people is the quickest way for people to feel a sense of bonding and belonging to another person. And so they're trialing choirs with new mothers who are experiencing postnatal depression as a prescription and treatment for that experience, which, Lizzie and I met in a singing group. And so we know firsthand that that's so true. Singing in a group of people, even if you're not very good at singing, it feels amazing.
So cool. We had the amazing singer Libby O'Donovan on last year, and she talked to us about why you should make your New Year's resolution joining a choir. And she has some incredible statistics around singing. And also there was an amazing study that you include in the book around something as simple as crocheting. Even crocheting can have massive benefits for us, right?
And really, the science shows that anything that's sensory, that busies our hands or our body in a particular way, that's a repetitive action, so sewing, crocheting, any kind of craft, you're actually stepping yourself towards a meditative state, a mindful state where you get into that zone, into that flow, and that is really good for us. That's actually essential for humans to experience that state of play or mindfulness. It helps our nervous system regulate and reset, and that puts us in a window to make good decisions for our life and for our well-being.
So cool. It's a really something that I found, like I mentioned that I've been doing a bit of painting by numbers and I absolutely love it. Before that, I was hooked on cross stitch. I really enjoyed cross stitch as well because it's like you say, it's that repetitive action. It's something that even if you screw it up, it doesn't really matter. You feel like you're producing something. I just love it. And when I'm overthinking now, or I feel like I'm feeling a bit anxious or something, it really is something, like you say, that's in my toolbox that I can use. I absolutely love it. And so you talk there a lot about the nervous system. What is our nervous system, and how does creativity interact with it? Why does this work so well in terms of the science?
Well, it's a very complicated, fragile system that's invisible to us, but it directs and kind of dictates so much of what we do, responds to input in our environment and the way we work with people and the way we respond to situations. And it's constantly in a state of change. And what we talk about in the book is how creativity and engaging with creative practice can help, I guess, in a way, manipulate the feelings that we're receiving from our nervous system. So creativity like that example you just said about cross stitch, if you kind of have a busy mind or you're in feeling a sense of anxiety or overwhelm, engaging with a regular practice like stitching or making, regular marks on a page has an interplay with our nervous system and brings it back to this regulated state, which we talk about in the book as being similar to that beautiful sense of feeling at home, or that lovely kind of feeling you get when you have a big sigh or you exhale. We're trying to bring ourselves back into that state as much as we can, and creativity is a beautiful way to do that. And also knowing that we tip in and out of that state all the time, which is perfectly normal.
And yeah, I think, in the world of mental health clinicians and practitioners, there's really a growing recognition that literacy about our nervous system is really missing from the general understanding of what does it mean to look after your mental health. So we hear that all the time. We've got to look after our mental health. We've got to keep ourselves feeling on a steady path. And if we have mental health challenges, which are really, really common, about 3 in 5 people at any one time. What do we do about that? And actually, the key part of that is to start with learning to notice the signs that your nervous system is telling you and the little messages it's giving you. Sometimes those messages are that you're in a state of fight, you're activated, there's a sense of threat or danger, or and you might feel really wired and hypervigilant and panicky. And so creative practices are a way to step us back to a state of what's called regulation, where we're in our window of functioning, connected to logic and problem solving and compassion and being able to connect with other people and learn new information. So creative practices, even just a little minute at a time. And we talk in the book about micro practices of repair that are just about those moments where you feel completely overwhelmed and anxious and full of dread and panic. There are really simple things we can do that are just about helping our nervous system to disrupt that process and bring us back to feeling logical and being able to think things through and then make good decisions from there.
Absolutely. And you talk in the book, and you mentioned it a little bit there, but about the window of tolerance. What is our window of tolerance, and how can it help us to understand the way in which the nervous system actually works?
So everyone has a window of tolerance, and that's the place, the state of our nervous system being in that kind of regulated place where we're in the present. We can learn new information. We can be creative in problem solving. We can feel compassion for others. And so we get pushed out of our window of tolerance, and it can cumulatively build up if our lives have a lot of ongoing and relentless stress and, input and demands, and we're never able to replenish and restore our nervous system, then it can build up to kind of default to shift out of our window of tolerance. And of course, also for people that have lived through really traumatic experiences, zooming out of your window of tolerance is something that's quite common and normal. And these things aren't bad. It's not bad to be out of your window of tolerance. It's a normal physiological response that our body's designed to do. But it can require, we can really help ourselves by learning how to notice what it's telling us and give it what it needs, And so sometimes those cues that we are outside the window of tolerance are messages that our nervous system needs something. We need to give it replenishment and restoration, and that might come in the form of rest. It might come in the form of, doing something that we enjoy, connecting with people that make us feel good, talking to a friend, or doing something creative. And, our definition of creativity is pretty broad. It includes moving your body, going outside, cooking a meal, watering the garden. They're all acts of doing something or making something that wasn't there before.
This episode is brought to you by my friends at YouFoods. This year, I decided to have YouFoods take charge of my meal prep. No more mental load of not only deciding what's for dinner, but making sure it's fresh, nutritionally balanced, and delicious. And let me tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. I no longer waste my Sunday afternoons filling containers with boring recipes that I don't even want to eat when it comes to dinner time. Hello, more time for creative pursuits and fun. YouFoods deliver gourmet, nutritionally balanced meals, fresh, never frozen, right to your door. All you do is hop online, choose what you like the look of from over 60 meals that are constantly being tweaked and added to, so they're more delicious than ever. And best of all, there's no cooking, no dishes, and no cleanup. Hallelujah. Make sure you use my code HELPFUL for up to $200 off your first 5 boxes. That's HELPFUL. In the book, you say that there are certain parts of life that have a two-way relationship with creativity, and joy is one of them. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that two-way relationship?
Joy is I mean, it's got a word that holds a lot of weight, right? It can almost be a bit of a stigma and like a bit of a pressure to be joyful and experiencing joy. But what we've found through our work and personal experience is that joy is one of the things that can amazingly sit right alongside feelings of despair and distress. So it's something that's readily available and always out there, and you can access it when you're in a state of distress or despair. So we talk about this process of trying to bring joy and cultivate joy into your life as a way to make you feel better for a minute, but also as a way to expand your own creativity. So there's that kind of twofold system. And one of the processes that we talk about cultivating joy is through a term called
I
glimmers. Have you
love
heard of
glimmers.
glimmers
I'm so
before?
excited to talk about glimmers.
Yeah, I love glimmers too. And the cool thing about glimmers is that they're kind of everywhere, right? Once you put your glimmer glasses on, you can start finding them a bit more readily. So we talk about hunting glimmers or glimmer hunting as a beautiful process of cultivating joy, which can become a bit of an antidote to possible feelings that you might have around distress or despair or anxiety, things like that.
And when it comes to the neuroscience or the psychology of glimmers, when it comes to the window of tolerance or learning how to rewire our nervous system, glimmers are like the opposite end of the spectrum to triggers. And so the more we notice glimmers and have that little spark of joy, we're actually building little new roads in our nervous system to recognize and get familiar with that feeling. And so that means it's more accessible and we can turn to it when we're really dysregulated. So it's, instead of joy being this far away thing that's only available in some future time when life's perfect, it's actually a practice of engaging with joy that can happen every day, even in amongst awful, awful stuff, but not ever alongside self criticism and, yeah, not giving yourself any self compassion. So that's when it's very hard to access joy.
I love glimmers too, because you can spot them everywhere. And the thing that I learned about glimmers is that when you grab onto a glimmer and you notice something that's like a glimmer, like the smell of a beautiful flower, or your dog doing something really cute, or a friend giving you a little gift or something like that, when you grab onto them and hold them in your mind and you think about them for a bit longer, you can turn them into a glow, right? Which is like an even bigger glimmer that brings you even more joy.
Yeah, we think of glimmers as something that is kind of small, fleeting, and marvelous. So they're a little bit elusive. You have to really kind of be open to noticing them. Um, and yeah, like Caitlin was said, they expand that window of joy and can become a creative practice. So, your creative practice might be drawing every day, or you might be out there hunting glimmers.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then it's a cycle where the more you notice, the more there are, and then the more you find yourself in that creative mindset of being curious and being playful. So it does kind of feed each other in a little cycle of joy and creativity.
And the act of experiencing a glimmer, what it does for your nervous system, it's an instant cue for feeling calm and grounded and safe. It's basically a cue for safety. So it might be fleeting and micro, but within that instant and that connection that you have to that glimmer, it's a little signal that says to your nervous system, hey, you're safe, you're okay, yeah, I've got you, it's all good. And it might pass, but for a tiny moment it's there. And so that's why we cultivate that as a practice.
Absolutely. I love it. And so, in terms of the things that we can start doing to broaden creativity in our lives and some of the creative prescriptions, there's like 3 styles of creative prescriptions that you recommend in the book: relief, recharging, and restoration. What's the difference between those styles? And then hopefully we can get into some examples too.
Yeah, so we're recognizing that we apply a different kind of dose depending on how we are. So the relief prescriptions are designed to be like a little micro reset in a moment where you're feeling really overwhelmed, you're really panicky, lots of anxiety, lots of adrenaline, or maybe you're feeling really numb and dissociated and flat. So they're very short. And, I think a lot of the times this idea of practicing self-care or looking after ourselves feels like it's a big ask of our time. And who's got time? Everyone's so busy. So this is about, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes of doing something that just disrupts that cycle in our nervous system. And then recharge practices are a bit longer. They're maybe half an hour, 15 minutes to half an hour. And they're things we might want to build into our life, like little anchors that are familiar, like walking the dog or doing some cross stitching or doing a bit of gardening, things that are familiar and take a little bit longer and give us that feeling of recharge. And then restoration practices are things that are more immersive and you might just fall into and spend hours doing and really get into that joy play space. And of course, we might not have time to do them every day, but they're important parts of, replenishing our nervous system and looking after ourselves.
Yeah, beautiful. And so, can you give us an example of some of those really quick things we can be doing, in those moments where we're really struggling, and those relief prescriptions?
Yeah, a lot of them are very much about engaging the senses. So, um, even like there's a lot of science around just being close to plants, even if it's an indoor plant, feeling the leaves, smelling the scent that comes out of plants, noticing the textures and the details. We know that that immediately impacts our brain chemistry. It immediately lowers stress hormones. Plants give out a scent that build and create and increase endorphins. Like they are helping us just by being there. So a really quick practice is just to get somewhere that's in proximity to plants. And, it sounds silly and it might feel silly, but like a moment of breathing, it's just taking in the sensory experience of that. Um, and I mean, there's a heap that involves movement, like even humming. Humming stimulates the vagus nerve, which is the center of where kind of distress happens. So we know that humming immediately helps to calm that down. So humming and pressing here where you feel the vibrations like that, it again might feel silly, but it can be really powerful. And it's used in a lot of trauma therapy processes too. Yeah.
So lovely. So, if we have a little bit longer, like we have that 15 minutes, half an hour that we perhaps want to kind of incorporate into our day or into our week, what kind of things can we be doing with that?
In terms of a creative practice, anything that's about making something. So even if that's a meal of some food, like, but not in a rush where there's pressure, there's hungry people waiting, but it's actually just about chopping things up and being really mindful about that, taking in the smell of the food, stirring. There's a lot of repetitive movement that can happen. So if we can find a way to make, I know that for me, cooking is it can be both. It can be that thing where I'm like, I can't believe I've got to cook dinner again. But then when there's space and time and I do it because it's something I want to enjoy, it can be a totally different experience. A lot of people find a practice of journaling or creative writing really, really powerful. And that's about writing not for it to be seen by other people, but just as an act of release. So writing whatever comes into your head, whatever's like floating around. It could be a story, it could be inventing something, or it could be the list of things you've got to do, and then you scrunch it up and you throw it away. Like that is a creative act and practice that a lot of people find really, really useful in just kind of clearing out the cobwebs.
And so many of these things are to do with play and finding the joy in the process rather than the end result, right? That should be our focus.
Yes. And it's like trying to think about creativity like we think about exercise. Like you don't have to be a champion Olympic athlete to get the benefits of exercise. So we can be pretty crap at running and still get the benefits. So we can do creative things badly or awkwardly or, not produce something amazing, but the process is still good for us.
Absolutely. And do you find that when you work with people with creativity and with these kind of daily practices or weekly practices, that it also helps us to release ourselves from perfectionism elsewhere in our lives?
It's like that having a creative practice is this training ground for practicing things we need to do in life, like take risks, try things that might not work out, put a lot of effort into something and then it's not perfect and we have to live with that. And so not all creative practice is beautiful and lovely. Sometimes it's uncomfortable and we also need to be okay with discomfort. And, that's a big part of our message about what it means to have mental health is to be able to sit with discomfort and cope and still be able to stay in our window of tolerance. So creativity sure does set us up to be able to experience that and build the muscle of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, with all the science and the evidence that you've talked about and that you've included in the book, it kind of, for someone like me, I feel like it gives me permission to prioritize this thing because there's so much evidence that this is so brilliant and just as important as going out and exercising or eating well, prioritizing creativity is just as important.
Yeah, and I think you totally nailed it there with that word permission. It's like giving yourself, allowing yourself time, however long it is, 5, 10, half an hour a day, to just play for the sake of play because it's a vital part of being human. It's necessary. It's for brain development, it's for connection, it's for nervous system regulation. So once you kind of approach it with that permission slip, it does become a lot easier.
Because that's the other thing. Like so many of us think, I want to start painting. I should get lessons, or I want to go out and I want to learn to do this particular craft, or I want to start singing. I should pay someone to teach me. Whereas a lot of the joy in actually these things is discovering how to do it, and you don't necessarily need to spend money.
Yeah, and we start badly and we get better as we go. So it's just like letting yourself be a bit bad at it to begin with.
I love it. I love it. And I always say, when you're a beginner, that is a brilliant place to be because the wins are so big and so often, when you're measuring your benchmark from being a total beginner, it is an absolute joy. So absolutely recommend this to everyone. Thank you both so much for chatting with me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was wonderful to chat with you.
My guests today were Caitlin Marshall and Lissie Rose. They're the founders of Makeshift, an organisation that helps to deliver creative first aid to people who need it most. I'm going to put the link to their beautiful book in the show notes. It would make a gorgeous gift for somebody. It's got all those brilliant creative prescriptions in there, as well as the science behind why they work. It's just a really beautiful book, and it's chunky, it looks really pretty, it's gorgeous. I think you're gonna love it. Check it out via the link in the show notes, and I'll also link to Lizzie and Caitlin on social media so that you can follow along with what they're up to. If you've just joined me for the first time this episode, please make sure you subscribe because we would love to have you in our little self-improvement community. It's just such a joy to have you all here. If you're enjoying the series so far, please leave me a review wherever you're listening. You know they make my day, you gorgeous people. The very lovely Psychic Sidekick on Apple Podcasts, love that name by the way, says, my head is exploding with new life hacks. Love this podcast and real life tips on navigating this sometimes complicated journey called life. Thank you, Ed, for bringing all these gurus onto your podcast. I've taken so many notes. Loved the friendship advice episodes especially. Oh, what a gorgeous review. Thank you. And I don't think you're alone in enjoying those friendship episodes. I've got a few more of those in the works for you because I know how well they hit for you guys and how that is like such a big thing for all of us right now. So keep your eye out. Make sure you subscribe because you're going to love those. And thank you again. I really appreciate it. It brings so much joy to me and it really feels great when I see what you guys are enjoying and what you're liking because it's just me and a microphone out here, so sometimes getting a little bit of feedback is just absolutely wonderful. I'm Ed Stott. I'm going to catch you next time. Until then, I sincerely hope that's helpful.